Hello and welcome back everyone to the coverage of YCS Lille, the 275th YCS, another major milestone in the Yu-Gi-Oh series. We're here today, myself, I'm Nadir, joined by Sebastian. We're going to be going through a little bit of a meta breakdown combined with some discussions of the Forbidden Limited list. So a lot of things happened.
Indeed.
Some big heavy hitters took place, and I guess we can probably go in order of some of the decks, some of the major tournament topping and represented decks. Let's begin with Snake Eye. So lots of different changes there, wasn't there?
Totally, yeah. So we go deck by deck and then talk about the changes for the deck specifically. Snake Eye, of course, was the most represented deck at Euros, which was our last major big event, and therefore it's good to see that deck addressed on the list as well. And in detail, it was Snake Eye Poplar going to 1, Snake Eye Ash also going to 1, and then of course also the Fiendsmith package of the deck was very much hit as well, with the Lacrima being forbidden now, and also the Beatrice being forbidden as well. Of course, I know, especially sad for you, but it is gone. And that definitely does make the deck still playable, but in a different way nowadays. You still see that deck at the top tables. It's still up there among the top contenders, but it does definitely lose some consistency. For example, drawing Poplar usually wasn't that big of a deal. Usually you would just search out the second one from the deck and you could still just perform your regular combo. Now, drawing Poplar actually makes your hand almost, I don't want to say unplayable, because you can still do some of the Fiendsmith stuff, but it definitely lowers the ceiling a lot, and therefore makes the deck a little bit more tricky to play, and therefore I would say definitely it's not the top contender of the format right now anymore.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some, thoughts among the community that Snake Eye wasn't actually hit too hard, but once you actually get a little bit of experience with the deck, you start to notice that it becomes so much more vulnerable to disruption.
That as well.
Previously you would just be able to go into your Fiendsmith engine, and then your Fiendsmith engine through Beatrice is how that gets you engine.
Yeah.
And with the Beatrice ban, that's
not anymore.
Not really possible, right? So that's a big hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we will probably still be seeing some Fiendsmith, Snake Eye specifically, but
totally.
I think probably what is most likely going to be the most represented deck, that's our prediction I suppose, is most likely Yubel. Yubel not actually taking too many drastic hits. We saw Apollosa being forbidden, which actually some decks weren't even really playing it before the Forbidden
Before the
Limited
list even, it was adjusted, right? Yeah, kind of funny to see.
So, you still have a lot of access to your disruption in the Yubel combo. You've got Varadras, you've got Desiree, so you still have ways to stop a lot of these really, really field-breaking possibilities with things like Dark Ruler and Evenly Match, because you can chain one of your Unchained traps, chain the Desiree, hit the Dark Ruler, for example. So it's very hard to actually deal with a Yubel deck going second. But some of those hits were the Dark Beckoning Beast to 1, or was it?
No,
Spirit
the opening of the Spirit Gates, the other part of the package. Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty much all they've lost.
Yeah.
So I think that the consistency might have potentially suffered a little bit with Yubel, but the ceiling is still very high. With the Snake Eye hit specifically, once the best deck comes down a notch, then that naturally is going to give Yubel an opportunity to sort of dominate from that position forward.
Totally. And I mean, the funny thing with Yubel is that we have Aerial Eatery in the TCG, and it's such a nice replacement for Fiend decks for that Beatrice that is gone now, and therefore Yubel now just constantly goes through that card. Handily enough, that's also a level 6 monster, meaning you can go into Caesar with it, for example, so lots of utility with that deck. Super variable deck that can adjust to a lot of situations, therefore definitely a good top contender to be in the format right now, I think, for sure. Yeah,
with the loss of Lacrima, it does deny some of the previous combo lines that Yubel had, but again, as you mentioned, the world premiere card of Aerial Eater fills such a niche really well in Yubel that to some extent it feels almost unchanged.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Yeah, it's still a super, super powerful deck, and I think absolutely the deck to beat for this weekend, and something you will probably be seeing quite a lot of on the live stream, especially in the Top Cut.
Yeah, but quite literally the deck to beat, because it won the European Championship, of course, is Yubel. Now I'm tricking myself. It's, of course, Tenpai. The Tenpai Dragons in the hands of Esteban Rey won the European Championship, and honestly, I can still see it happening. I can still see them taking down here this weekend in Lille, because they did have some adjustments on the list. They did see Sangan Summoning go down to 1, and they did also lose 2 Pot of Prosperities, with this card now also being limited. But the deck still has the explosivity that it had before. When it gets access to the right cards, when it does have a Raigeki or Lightning Storm to just wipe out the entire field, normal summon Pydra, special summon Chandra, and there it is. Like, it doesn't need much, and that deck is very, very scary still, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. The Sangan summoning, I think, was one of the most difficult parts for decks to deal with Tenpai, because just making all of your monsters, unaffected for the turn is extremely powerful. So they do lose a little bit of their resilience in that way.
For sure.
But for the most part, they still have a lot of tools available to them. Mulcharmy Perulia is still kind of a staple in the deck.
True.
And even in a couple of weeks, with the release of Rage of the Abyss, we're going to see the new Fualos going to be played in Tenpai. So in the future, Tenpai is somewhat quite secure in its position as a meta threat. And for this event specifically, prior to Rage of the Abyss, I think, as you mentioned, it's still definitely a powerhouse that we will absolutely be seeing in Top Cut. I think it would be hard to not find a couple of Tenpai duelists sneaking through to such a large event.
Surely we'll see them. But then the other deck that made it all the way to the finals at the European Championship is a deck that you are enjoying a lot lately, and you have a high opinion of, and that is Ritual Beast, right? Do you think it's still a top contender going into this tournament as well?
So one of the best things about Ritual Beast is, other than the prosperity limitation, which was a card that Ritual Beast was playing, you still have a lot of advantages in Ritual Beast, and in some ways got a little bit stronger because of the rise of Yubel.
True.
Because Yubel gets better, that sort of indirectly can help Ritual Beast, because one of the best tools that Ritual Beast has access to it is engine access through its natural combo going into the arch nemesis Protoss.
Yes.
Protoss called Dark. I mean, it's very difficult to deal with that. You have to very specifically draw infinite impermanence to beat Ritual Beast, and usually if you hold it, you just let them combo through, because Ritual Beast does have a lot of ways to extend through the lesser powerful hand traps, such as Ash, Imperm, Veiler. If you wait specifically for the Protoss, a card that we've seen played in Ritual Beast, for example, Book of Eclipse, to try and dodge that. But at the same time, again, I think the Dark call on Protoss is really, really powerful. And of course, Dimensional Shifter, a card that is usable in both Tenpai and Ritual Beast, and I think in order to counter Yubel, you're absolutely going to probably see those in the main for these.
Yeah, for sure, huge factor. Also, in Ritual Beast, we did see a lot of Appaloosa as well being summoned at the European Championship in that deck. That card now, of course, also forbidden. We haven't even mentioned it yet when we talked about the other decks, a little with Yubel, but it is definitely going to lower the ceiling of a lot of the combo decks, right? That Appaloosa is going to be not there anymore, and therefore it's going to be easier to break fields in general, right? Because you don't have to go for that Appaloosa that a lot of the decks beforehand were putting up.
Yeah, I think Ritual Beast with the right hand generally tries to go for a hard summoned ulti guy.
Oh yeah, that's the best.
That's usually one of the ways that you deal with things like a Nibiru threat, and it's a good card, of course, to end on, just because an Omni disruption in that regard is still super powerful. So yeah, Ritual Beast I think still has a lot going for it. I don't think it's going to be the absolute best deck, but I think it's on the precipice of the meta, exactly kind of where it wants to be, as this sort of peripheral power against the best decks through things like Protoss and Dimensional Shifter.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Another deck that had decent representation in the top cut of the European Championship was Memento Fiendsmith specifically. You could play it as a pure deck as well, which does seem a bit of success, but of course you still kind of want to include the Fiendsmith cards as well, and I think it's still a very, very valid pick. So this might be one of the decks, though, that got hurt the most by that Beatrice to 0 hit.
Yeah, because I think previously it was like Engraver was one card combo.
Memento combo, funnily enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now you don't have that connection piece anymore, so you can't just go from Fiendsmith combo into Memento combo anymore. But the deck still has a lot of things going for it. For example, Bone Party from the beginning has always been super good at dodging hand interactions like Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence and so on and so forth. And also still, from my opinion, from my perspective, Memento kind of has the plans attitude, right? People don't really know what Memento is doing just yet. They're still kind of figuring out. Everyone knows what the Yubel deck is doing. But if you're playing against Memento, I think you might still be struggling a little bit to find the right points of interaction. And therefore, I think going into the tournament with that kind of a deck could actually be a pretty good approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think with something like Ritual Beast, people sort of know that Protoss is the most important thing, whereas Memento, it's like, there's a couple of places you can disrupt Memento, but depending on their hand and the extenders, there's still some opportunity for Memento to extend.
Yeah, for sure.
Talking about another fusion deck, I suppose, Branded did get Branded Fusion limited to 1. And there's
That's a push to the deck.
There's also the Chimera option as well that's been floating around and potentially even a little bit more powerful. In some ways, Branded Fusion to 1 is a is addressing the non-branded decks. You know, these decks like Voiceless that play it as sort of like a small kind of supplementary engine. Do you have any opinions on Chimera for this event?
I think Chimera might absolutely be one of the sleeper picks for this event.
Yeah.
I've seen Chimera in very competent hands over the last couple of weeks. I know a couple of really high-profile players that will bring that deck into this tournament, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Chimera in top 8, top 4, maybe the finals even. I think
anywhere.
Yeah, like anywhere. We're just going to see it for sure. No, it does have a really good ceiling. It is combined with the Fiendsmith cards and can still make very good use of the Fiendsmith cards. And I think overall the deck is a really strong contender. I think it has a little bit lower of a ceiling compared to Jubel, but it does have a little bit more flexibility getting there, and like maybe going second also offering a little bit more flexibility, and especially that going second factor I think is what is drawing people to the Chimera deck specifically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I suppose a final point to talk about, sort of a relevant part of the anti-meta is definitely stun decks. We've seen skill drain going to 1.
True.
And I think that's quite an important hit, because previously with 3, in very specifically Runic, just because of its ability to draw so many cards with things like, of course, your Fountain, card Demise, resolving a Fountain every single turn, you're going to be seeing a lot of cards. You will most likely get to a skill drain at some point, but now with it being limited to 1, it's basically nowhere near as guaranteed as it used to be prior to the last Forbidden Limited list. So I think skill drain to 1 is going to be quite a significant hit to Runic stun variants, but speaking of Runic, you know, there will most likely be some sort of Whitewoods appearance featuring the Runic engine, so despite the skill drain limitation and just how powerful something like Jubel is, we could definitely still see that in the metagame this weekend.
I think so as well. There's plenty of options, of course. I wouldn't be surprised to also see like maybe a Pendulum deck with now Plushfire and Kirin available at the top tables, maybe even in top cut. Then the Rose Dragons have also gotten some push on the list as well, so maybe that is doing stuff. We also see Gimmick Puppets getting quite the hits on the Forbidden and Limited list as well, but still being able to be piloted at a decent success level, so I could see that as well. So definitely still plenty of options throughout the room. Throughout the weekend we're going to see plenty of different decks. Your call now, Bo. What's going to take it down?
I think I'm just going to do the same as last event. I'm going to call Ritual Beast once again, one more time. You know, big fan of Lara, so hopefully we'll see a Ritual Beast representative take down YCS Lille.
And I mean, you heard it, I'm a little biased. I think Chimera. I think Chimera will be there.
Okay.
But of course, we're going to find out through the entire weekend. Hope you stay tuned with our coverage here of the 275th YCS in Lille. And we're going back to some more live coverage now.